Let me take this opportunity to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a very happy holiday season. As the threat of a government shutdown looms, however, we should understand that this may not be a particularly happy time for many hundreds of thousands of federal employees who may be sent home without a paycheck. In fact, many may be required to continue to do their jobs. They're working, but they're not going to get paid. At a time when federal employees have been under assault for a number of years, this is just another insult that they do not need and that our country does not need. Let us not forget that these are workers who have children to feed, mortgages to pay, and health care expenses. Let us also not forget that millions of Americans who utilize government services will be impacted by this shutdown. It is no secret that Donald Trump recently made it clear to the whole world that he welcomed a government shutdown. At a meeting in the White House on December 11th with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leaders, he said, and I quote, "Yes, if we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government. Absolutely." End of quote, Donald Trump. That's what he said on December 11th. Then, in textbook Trumpian fashion, he heard from Republican leaders, flip-flopped, and indicated that he did not want to shut down the government. Well, that lasted for a few days. But then, as is often the case with our erratic and impulsive president, he flip-flopped once again after hearing criticism from Fox News, from Rush Limbaugh, and from other right-wing media commentators. In doing so, he rejected the Republican sentiment in Congress with a threat to veto any legislation which did not contain $5 billion for his wall on the Mexican border. Sadly, this did not have to happen. As many of you know, on Wednesday, just 2 days ago, the United States Senate voted unanimously to pass a continuing resolution which would have kept the government open until February. And let me repeat, not one Republican in the Senate rejected that agreement. It was unanimous. As of 2 days ago, it was widely perceived that the House of Representatives would pass the same resolution and keep the government open until February. In this very partisan time, Democrats and Republicans came together with the understanding that a government shutdown would be harmful to the country and that it had to be prevented. Think about it for a moment. Democrats and Republicans came together after a whole lot of discussion and agreed on how to keep the government open. And then, literally after 1 day of right-wing media criticism, the President of the United States undermines all of that work. To say the least, that is extremely problematic behavior. Now, let me say a few words about the center of this unnecessary shutdown controversy, and that is the $5 billion that President Trump wants for a wall on the Mexican border. Despite what Trump may tell you, and this is a very important point, there is no disagreement in Congress about the need to control the border. In fact, billions of dollars in a bipartisan way have already been appropriated to do just that. The problem with Trump's wall is that it is a massive waste of taxpayers' money. Trump's wall is simply a political stunt that will not make our country any safer. The truth is that we now have the technology and resources to control the border in a much more cost-effective way. Think about it. At a time when we have a crumbling infrastructure, when some of our veterans will be spending Christmas sleeping out on the streets, and where in city after city, homelessness is becoming a major crisis, it is irresponsible to spend billions of dollars to simply fulfill a campaign pledge born of the president's divisive, xenophobic political posturing. We as a nation have got to get our priorities right, and spending $5 billion on a wall in the Mexican border is not a sensible priority. This country faces, as many of you know, enormous problems. Right now, as we speak, the stock market is struggling, interest rates are rising, the Secretary of Defense is heading for the exit in response to Trump's make it up as you go along foreign policy. The turnover rate at the White House for senior staff is unprecedented in modern history. The president's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, is heading to jail, and the Mueller investigation regarding possible Trump campaign collusion with the Russians is coming to a head. At a deeper level, beyond the issues of the day, at a deeper level, we remain the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all, and tens of millions of our people remain uninsured or underinsured while we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Economically, as we look across this country, we find that the younger generation, our kids, will likely have, for the first time in modern American history, a lower standard of living than their parents. Today, hundreds of thousands of bright young kids cannot afford to go to college because their families lack the income, and over 40 million Americans are struggling with outrageous levels of student debt. As many of you know, 2 recent major reports on climate change have told us and the entire world that we must combat aggressively global warming, which is a growing threat to the United States and to countries all over the world. Clearly, this president's erratic and impulsive behavior is a danger to our country and a major impediment in terms of addressing the short-term and long-term crises that we face. His decision to shut down the government is just the latest example of this destructive pattern. The time, in my view, is long overdue for congressional Republicans to stand up to Donald Trump so that in a bipartisan way, we fund the government and prevent this shutdown. Thank you all very much.